How did cocaine come into the black community? Why is AIDS the #1 killer of black people in America as well as in Africa? Is this just an accident? We have a government, sir, that needs to be opened up before the American people, because I believe there are criminals in this government that have to be brought before the bar of justice. And I'm not saying something as an insane radical, but if America continues in the way that she's going, the whole world will turn against her.
Many times we have always highlighted some of the challenges that black people have gone through in the United States. And one of the major things is that there has been a systemic disenfranchisement among black people. But then there are certain leaders who have always come out to call out the government and the United States system against such kind of heinous activities. One of these leaders is Farrakhan, the minister who is the leader of Nation of Islam. Many times he has gotten in trouble because of his hard stance and demand for justice for black people. And this is something that he is known for. Now, I came across a clip here that is quite interesting. He was engaging in a discussion with a media panel composed of reporters who seemed to be quite biased and prejudiced towards him. Watch this video and see how Minister Farrakhan dismantled the plan that was hatched for him.
Is the truth.
The trial call.
The American government is a criminal government in dealing with Iraq. Look at the statement of your vice president. He said there is no doubt that there are weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Why does not he do what the United States government did when they found weapons of mass destruction in Cuba? They came before the United Nations. They presented the evidence and a strong case by the vice president saying that there are weapons of mass destruction there, that there is no doubt. Where is the proof? There is no country in the world that agrees with America going to war with Iraq. So who is the real threat? Is it that Saddam is a threat to the world, or is that President Bush and his administration is a threat to world peace?
You join significant numbers of Americans in condemning an attack on Iraq by the United States, especially if we're going to go alone, and it's increasingly looking like that's the case. Why the Nuremberg comment? Why, once again, the Nuremberg trials, one of the most civil attempts to redress a horrible grievance, a moment in 20th century history, trying imperfectly as it was carried out to bring justice, to bring those who did these horrible things to Jewish people to justice.
Sir,
you raise this.
It's
almost like I'm going to get these Jews again. Wham! Right there in the belly. We got them again. You know, there's a meanness about this, sir. A meanness that's not
Mr.
becoming
Donahue,
a minister.
Let me say this.
Go ahead.
It has nothing to do with Jews. I'm talking about a principle. The trial was set up to rectify evils, injustice in the world, in dealing with the Jewish people. Here you have an international criminal court being set up that will deal with any nation mistreating their people.
You talk about
America
the current
does not wish to be a part of this international criminal court, nor does the Security Council give America a pass for a year that she can do whatever she wishes to do in peacekeeping efforts and not come before a world court. This is not right. Here's the president of the greatest nation on earth ordering a hit on Saddam Hussein. What makes our president any better than a mob boss or a gang leader or a drug leader that orders hits on people that you don't like? That is not the civilized way to behave, nor is that the way of the president of the greatest nation on earth to behave.
Yes. Once again, you're not alone in this position. I don't know, I'm certain you must feel it. You have significant numbers of Americans who support the position that this is not a good idea to go in unilaterally, Brent Scowcroft, to name one. General Schwarzkopf, to name two. I mean, what's impressive to you in terms of military credentials? The question is, do you do your brothers and sisters, the members of the African American community, a service by this kind of mean reference to sending the president before a tribunal, someone like Nuremberg? It sounds like you're doing your best to turn off the white folks and not make a step forward.
But what I'm trying to show America, that you are not above the law. You say this is a government of laws and not of men. But now America wants to contravene international law and go before the world as an international criminal. I do not think that this is the way that the American people want their leaders to behave, and I think she's losing the respect of the nations of the earth by this kind of behavior.
Yes, and you sat down with a guy who gassed the Kurds.
Oh, sir.
You sat down with a man who has knocked off members of his own cabinet, his closest friends.
Look,
you're not denying this man
wait a minute.
is wanton in the area of moral thinking and virtue.
Sir, I sit down with white people who killed Native Americans, who brought my fathers into slavery for 310 years, who watched our people lynched and did nothing about it. So if I can sit with them...
You may have sat down with the ancestors.
I sat down with the children of them. But is the American government so innocent? How did crack cocaine come into the black community? Why is AIDS the #1 killer of black people in America as well as in Africa? Is this just an accident? We have a government, sir, that needs to be opened up before the American people, because I believe there are criminals in this government that have to be brought before the bar of justice. And I'm not saying something as an insane radical, but if America continues in the way that she's going, the whole world will turn against her, and this is not something that I want to see or any decent thinking American wants to see.
We are with Minister Louis Farrakhan, and we'll be back entertaining your phone calls in just a moment.
Since you don't like me, Jewish people of America, since you don't like me, press of America, why have not you been able to stop me from doing what I do? You're angry with me, our righteous people.
Jews were getting their heads knocked by cops who just didn't want these black folks in the neighborhood. That was communism. And now you're out there making faces, smiling. I see the hurt. I do. Call me a grandstander.
Sir,
I mean, a man of your talent and power.
This is 2002. You bring up something...
Now you're going to say it's old stuff.
Just a minute, sir. You brought up something from 1985. Now, ask me a question. Are there good Jews? Of course there are. Are there Jews that are righteous? Of course there are.
Oh, we waited so long to hear you say that.
Are there Jews that have benefited black people? Of course there are. We don't put those righteous persons in a class of those that are not good any more than you put indecent blacks in the class of those that are doing good.
Or indecent Catholics.
Thank you very much. And there seems to be a lot of that today.
But I don't call Catholicism a gutter religion either.
Neither did I call Judaism that. And I wish that you all would stop bringing up what I have defended for 18 years. You didn't bring me on here to talk about yesterday.
Let me talk about 1994. Is that yesterday?
Man, you need to go back to, your program.
Not a few people.
This is a modern program. Let's get modern.
All right, 1994, modern.
Thank you. Come on up
1994.
to 2000 and 2002.
University of Wisconsin. To the whites and white Jews in the audience, I say I'm going to be a rough ride, buddy. Buckle your seatbelts, you're warning them, because I didn't come to pin the tail on the donkey. I come to pin the tail on the hunky. Bring me your rabbis and I'll strip your butts naked.
See?
1994. And then you come on, I ask you about this and you say it's history.
Donahue, why did you invite me here to ask me questions about something that somebody else said? I thought you were a much more decent man than that.
You didn't say
Why
that?
don't you deal with the real issues that confront this nation in 2002?
Okay.
That's what I'm here for.
Right.
Not to answer something that I've already answered since 1984.
You don't.
And I've answered them well on your old shows. Do you want this to be your old show?
No,
Or do you want this to be a new show?
I don't.
Then let's come on up to date
I don't.
then.
Okay, you don't like my question.
No, I don't.
But I did mention 1994. That's not ancient history.
But I did not make those remarks. You're attributing to me something that was made by somebody else.
You didn't say I come to pin the tail on the honky?
No, sir.
Bring me
That's
a rabbi?
not my language.
All right. Well, what do you want to talk about, Minister?
Well, now,
Farrakhan?
when you asked me to come here tonight, sir, you asked to talk about my recent peace mission. You asked to talk about Iraq. You asked to talk about reparations.
I know.
You asked to talk about Zimbabwe. None of that has been mentioned tonight.
Well, we're just.
So I'm asking
All right.
you, sir, what did you ask me here for?
We're getting started here.
Thank you.
I do ask you to. I think that a man of your faith and talent and intellect cannot get out from under the curiosity on the part of the press, not only the white press, but the black press as well, to call you on some of these inflammatory things that you say. And you're spending half your life explaining to reporters that you didn't mean that, you meant something else, it wasn't this, you're misquoted. How can a man who has so much influence why would you have to spend so much time explaining yourself? Especially a man of your verbal skills.
Sir,
Even I understand it when you say
yeah, but
things like this.
Donahue, I mean, this is your show. You are the one raising the old questions that I've already answered over 20 years. Now, sir, if that's the way you want to conduct yourself, that's your business. But I think the American people deserve something better from you as well as from me. Now, this is 2002, and America is facing some very real and critical problems and decisions that have to be made. I think we need to talk about those things, Mr. Donahue.
And we will
and I
when
would
we
feel more comfortable being
I want
with
you to be comfortable. You're in my studio. I want you to be comfortable. We got a lot to talk about, and we'll do it when we come back in just a moment. We're with Minister Louis Farrakhan. Let's talk about Israelis and the Palestinians. Here's one of the points you made. Let me show our viewers here. Minister Farrakhan on the hopelessness of the Palestinians, right here.
You know, beloved brothers and sisters, that hopelessness is the mother of violence. It is the mother of suicide. It is the mother of self-destruction.
That's also 1984 now. Okay, you're not going to be upset with me for going back there. That's the wisdom of so many people today. Suicide bombing is the result of hopelessness. You believed that in 84 and you believe that today.
That is correct.
And you also believe that Israel has a more prominent seat at the table of discussions here in this country, and that our favoring Israel has not promoted the peace in that area. You would want to add what to that?
I think that the United States of America has a great opportunity to win the hearts of the Arab and Muslim world, not by favoring Israel, but by being an honest broker in the process for peace. I was in the Middle East when President Bush made his now famous peace initiative, where he called for the removal of Yasser Arafat as the leader and sets down several conditions which would be the predicate for the United States working to see the Palestinians with an independent state. Most of the people in that part of the world rejected that idea of America, the greatest exponent of democracy, literally trying to coerce the Palestinian people on the basis of their desire to get rid of an elected leader, and that they would not deal with with him if he were re-elected.
And for that reason, you feel that it would be possible for us to have peace in the Middle East if we brought our own power to bear and our own influence to both sides. I'll give you a chance to expand on that when we come back in just a moment. In all of Islam, he is Minister Louis Farrakhan. Ever want to talk to him? Here's your chance. Minister Farrakhan returns, answering your phone calls as soon as we catch up on the news from MSNBC.
I'm Natalie Morales. Here's what's happening.
Who in here do we want to stay? And who in here do we want to go? Yes, sir. And we want to show them that never again will they ever disrespect the black community. We must make them afraid. That's right. That's right. To do evil to us and think they can get away with it.
You fill Yankee Stadium.
I never was in Yankee Stadium.
I thought you appeared in Yankee Stadium.
No, sir.
Well, which stadium? Which stadium am I confused? You certainly brought
Randall's Island.
But in other cities, there's thousands and thousands of people.
Yes.
Come to hear you speak. And I think I understand why. You speak to their anger. And you know, it's not possible to argue against the anger. Let's look at just a couple of things. Unemployment rate. This is July of this year. Whites 5.3%, Hispanics 7.6%, almost 10%, 10% of black folks. And these numbers, you know, we all know there's a lot more than that, unemployed. How about the jails? 2 million people in jail. For every 100,000 people in prison, 3,500 are black, 1,100 Hispanic, and 462 are white. When I hear you speak to these injustices, to these, you know, racial profiling, New Jersey state troopers, honestly, I think if I were a black male, I'd be at Randall's Island listening to you speak. I would. And the political power that you have is undeniable. But you make it tough on the white reporters. I mean, how, it's with all this history of this kind of rhetoric, it's awful tough to say, hey, Minister Farrakhan, sit down, tell us how horrible we are. We have to challenge you as you would challenge us. This isn't a game. This is a matter of the respect that we want to have as professionals. You can't get up there and talk like that as a man of God, using language like you do. So I'm asking for some understanding here. You bring this on yourself.
Sir, if I took the New Testament and took Jesus, the greatest human being in the eyes of Christians that ever lived, I could take Jesus with the scriptures and give him a sound bite and make him look anti-Semitic? Because there's a statement that Jesus made in St. John 8:44 where he condemns Jews. If you pull that out, put that up on the screen tonight, they'd be saying Jesus anti-Semite. When Jesus beat the people in the temple, All we need is a 30-second bite on Donahue or CBS or CNN, and they'd say, look at that enraged maniac, how he beat those people out of the temple. You could accuse Jesus of teaching hate, for Jesus said in the gospel, you can't be my disciple unless you hate your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, yea, even your own life for my sake. Take that out of context. Jesus is a hate teacher. Another thing, take Jesus out of context. He's a man of peace. Wow. But he said, think not that I come to bring peace, nay, a sword. So if this media were listening to Jesus, like you all listen to me, to snatch things out of context, to deliberately make me look other than what I really am. That is my argument with the press, and that's my argument with you tonight. In fact, I'm really surprised at you, because I thought Donahue, a great man. We missed you when you got your hiatus.
Well, thank you, Minister.
But coming back, this country needs people that will bring out of those who are talking the real issues behind their words. That's the kind of man you are, and that's the kind of man I want you to be, so that your program won't diminish over time, but will grow.
Let's talk about reparations. Here you are, it's a speech at the Apollo Theater. Here you are, speaking of reparations. Roll the tape.
Who built this country?
The Million Man March.
No, that was last week.
This is the reparations. This is the reparations rally a week ago Sunday. Sorry, and I want to give you a chance to. We've already established that this was a very, very discouraging turnout. Doesn't mean there's something wrong with you, but it certainly means that the excitement and the energy that we knew at, for example, the Million Man March was not there at all.
But we were no part of the organization of this march, but we are definitely a part of the idea that the damage that was done to black people has to have a hearing and reparations. If the Japanese Americans could get reparations for their suffering, and even the Italians and the German Americans during World War II suffered injustice, and the Chinese Americans, as the rise of Mao Zedong and communism in that part of the world, suffered injustice in the hands of the government of the United States of America. All the while that was going on, black people have suffered in this country. And the sad part about it, Mr. Donahue, is that our government would not send a high-level representative to Durban, South Africa, to talk on racism and the effect of the international transatlantic slave trade. Here's 400,000 black men and women in the armed forces of America that President Bush is willing to send to Iraq. But the president nor his administration have apologized for slavery, nor will they speak forthrightly against racial profiling. I don't think we have a fight in Iraq. I think our fight is to make America a better nation for all of us to live in. And I don't think that the war, beating the war drum for Iraq, is going to solve the problems that create the crisis of confidence in the American electorate.
Nicole from Florida, are you there?
Yes.
You wanted to ask Minister Farrakhan.
Minister Farrakhan, why is it that you feel descendants of former slave owners need to pay for their forefathers' crimes when they have not committed crimes themselves?
You know, thank you for the question. I watched the trial of O.J. Simpson, and he won in the criminal court, and they found him not guilty, but they tried him again, and they found him responsible. The present generation of whites is absolutely not guilty of what was done by generations of whites hundreds of years ago. But I think the present generation of whites have to accept the responsibility to right the wrong, because the wrong that was done 400 years ago is the effect of it is still seen in the black community today. Who will accept accept the responsibility, live up to the challenge, and make America a better America, not just for whites, but for blacks and Native Americans, Hispanics, and poor people. That is the responsibility of the present generation of whites. And I would hope that if you accept this responsibility, that the guilt of what happened by the fathers, the sins of that will not be passed on to the children.
And we'll be back in just a moment. Tomorrow, I take on the titans of the religious right, the Reverend Jerry Falwell and former presidential candidate Gary Bauer. Later this week, Today's Show weather guy, Al Roker.
If the man is telling the truth about what he says, whether it is critical of you, critical of me, critical of our people, critical of a government, critical of America, critical of Jews, critical of Christians, critical of Muslims, I have the right to say what I believe, and you have the right to record what I say as I say it, and don't mix it up.
I agree with all of that. You have a right to say what you believe, as you have. Incidentally, regarding reparations, present-day black folks would make their contribution to these reparations through their taxes. So black folks, tax money would be going to pay black folks reparations. And one of the criticisms of this reparations idea is that you can't separate black and white taxes. It's impossible.
Yeah, well, you ask the Japanese Americans who pay taxes.
For the Japanese brothers, you mean?
How are their reparations going to be paid? You ask the Jews who suffered in Germany, how are their reparations paid? Because I believe they pay taxes as well. We're not just talking about money, because there's an old saying that a fool and his money will soon part. The Bible says, my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. There has to be a transfer of knowledge that would allow the black man and woman of America to heal from the condition imposed by 300 years of chattel slavery and 140 years of living under injustice. That has to be repaired. Not just money, but a transfer of knowledge. We need to talk about land. We need to talk about how we're going to build a future for our people. You just mentioned prison statistics and the injustice of it. You know, 20 years ago, Phil, when the business community began to move out of the inner cities because they felt that the inner cities would explode in racial unrest, when those businesses moved out and moved into foreign countries to give those jobs to a cheap labor market, many blacks and Hispanics in the inner cities lost their jobs, went on welfare, or began selling drugs or involving themselves in criminal enterprise or joining the armed forces of the United States so that they could make a living to feed their families. This is why there's such an imbalance in the prison population, because job opportunities are not there, and we have not been sufficiently taught how to use our knowledge to do something constructive for ourselves. And that's the value of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Sharon in California. Sharon.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
I love you, Minister Farrakhan.
Thank you.
My question to you is, in the Nation of Islam, are you endorsing the registration of mixed couples, for instance, African-American brothers with Caucasian women, and vice versa?
Thank you. We have never approved of interracial marriage. We feel that the black woman is a suffering woman with very few men to link herself to. So we don't want to see our black men necessarily marrying white women or white men marrying black women. However, we cannot legislate love. When people fall in love, what can you do about that? But the rule is that whites generally marry whites, Chinese generally marry Chinese, Indians generally marry Indians, and blacks generally marry our own. But if there's a couple that are in love with each other and marry, we do not try to separate them.
Your marriage is how long has your marriage
This
in a vital way proceeded?
49 years. Next year will be 50 years.
You have 9 children.
9 children and about 40 grandchildren and 9 great-grandchildren.
And how's your health?
My health is good, as you can
Grandpa's
see.
health is good?
Grandpa's health is good.
You had serious bout with prostate cancer.
That's correct.
And you went to the Cobalt and you had that new treatment and it works for you, does it?
I think it's a form of treatment that I would recommend if the cancer has not gone too far. Seed implantation. I think Mayor Giuliani had that treatment and he seems to be doing quite well.
We are in Secaucus, New Jersey, talking with Louis Farrakhan, the leader of the Nation of Islam. Kim from California, you're there?
Yes.
You wanted to say.
You've been accused of accepting financial assistance from Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. Can you please explain your relationship with Gaddafi and these financial allegations?
They're not allegations, they're truth. Muammar Gaddafi loaned the Nation of Islam $5 million for an economic development plan. And I have a very good relationship with Muammar Gaddafi. We are friends, we are brothers. And he has great respect for me and I for him. In fact, I have great love and admiration for him. And I'm very grateful to Almighty God for his snatching the idea of a United States of Africa from Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah and Gamal Abdel Nasser, which resulted just recently in the formation of the African Union.
And we'll be back in just a moment.
Want to see on Donahue? Log on to donahue.msnbc.com and pitch your ideas. Plus, you can chat along with the show live every night. Speak out and let us know what you think. Phil's on the web now at donahue.msnbc.com.
I'm thinking of the loved ones of Pan Am 103 who are watching you embrace Gaddafi. You don't think he's responsible for that? I mean, you couldn't. You wouldn't embrace him if you thought he was.
No, I don't believe he's responsible for that. But the United States shot down an Iranian jet with nearly 300 persons on that. There's been a lot of terrible tragedy in this world.
Right.
And now we're living at a time when we have to atone for the things that we've done that are ill and wrong, so that we can make a better world for ourselves and our children to live in.
Yeah.
And that's what I hope.
I do too. I do too. That's what makes your pattern of rhetoric and accusations that you're being taken out of context so hard to deal with when we think of what a healer you could be. What a healer. Michael from Florida.
What a healer I am.
Michael,
Hi.
go ahead.
My question is for Mr. Farrakhan.
Yes.
My question is, why does he feel that he is such a good American and talks about portraying good Americans when he has such close ties to foreign evils that are against us?
Close ties, I assume.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
You know, a good American, I'm sure, are those that love their country and wave the flag. But to me, the best Americans are those who fight for those principles upon which the United States was founded. Martin Luther King Jr. at one time was looked upon as a divisive force in this country. But Martin Luther King said he was a drum major for justice. And it is only justice that will make America have the perpetuity that America should have. And so it is voices like mine, unafraid to speak truth to power. And I say this to the American people. You need to rise today and let the president know that unless he makes the case for war, America should never be the aggressor and attack a nation that cannot really defend itself against the power of the greatest military power in the history of the world. That's what makes me a good American. I use freedom of speech responsibly to correct a government that I feel has gone wrong. All of you should speak up. If not, I'll be glad to speak for you.
You've gotten, the Nation of Islam has received high marks for the young men who accompany you. Boy, they just look military, bearing, clear of eye, drug-free, each and every one. Wonderful message. You've cleaned out public housing projects and protected young children from the evils of drugs. And do you get any federal money helping you do this?
We did at one time, but we're under sanctions now because they say we're anti-Semitic. I can say on this program, Phil, I have never been, nor am I now, a hater of the Jewish people. What I dislike is injustice. And when I speak to that, and speak critically of those Jewish persons who I feel are unjust to us, I feel it's criminal to call me anti-Semitic. Well, that I am not.
Yeah, I don't know. You don't bring up the Christians as much as you bring up the Jews. Incidentally, regarding, I don't see, my president has already said, I don't see how we can allow public dollars to fund programs where spite and hate is the core of the message. That's what I'm trying to say. You don't need all this spite and hate. And let me accept your word that it's not true. Well, you're giving the appearance that it's true. Louis Farrakhan preaches hate. Louis Farrakhan is a hateful person who has preached an anti-Semitic message, which is ugly.
George W. Bush is preaching hate every time he stands on the television telling us that Saddam Hussein is a threat. Saddam Hussein didn't cause Enron and World.com. He didn't call the crisis of confidence. He's not responsible for police brutality and mob attacks and hate crimes in America. No, Mr. President, you are preaching hate. And
wow, what a heated exchange. I think that is Louis Farrakhan for you. You know, Minister Louis Farrakhan never minces his words. He has a conviction, and once he believes in something, he will always pursue it to the long end. And I think being just one person facing those three journalists, it was a walkover for him. This tells you that when someone is equipped with knowledge, you cannot defeat them. You see, these guys have brought up issues and the hearsays that they have about Louis Farrakhan and the things that they think Louis Farrakhan has done. But then if you look at the kind of responses that Minister Louis Farrakhan has given, you'd be happy if you are a black person or if you are a supporter of him to know that he was well equipped and ready to handle them regardless of the kind of thoughts and the kind of slurs that they threw at him. Now, I asked myself, why is it that most black leaders sometimes face backlash as Louis Farrakhan has faced? You know, sometimes these black leaders are just reaching out and speaking up for their people who cannot speak for themselves. And then you find that the government is coming out with kind of falsified issues and planting them on people like Louis Farrakhan. Why is he so hated? Why is it that black leaders who are able to speak their minds freely are always executed, are always faced with a lot of threats, are always hunted down? Why is this the case? This is a question that everybody must ask, because as black people, certainly we are the majority in the world, but then we are looked at in a different way. In the United States, they form a part of minority groups. Look at the inventions that have happened. Black invention rule the world. Blacks are the people who control this world. But then if you look at how the society has been wired, They have been looked at as people who do not own anything or people who do not deserve to be respected. So here is my little research on why these black leaders are always targeted. Black American leaders frequently challenge systemic issues such as racial injustices, economic inequality, and historical discrimination that has existed in the United States. Their advocacy can disrupt the status quo, raising uncomfortable questions for established power structures and media institutions. For example, leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and many more have drawn a significant media attention by confronting deeply ingrained social issues. This confrontation can provoke defensive reaction and result in polarized media coverage. So this is the same thing that is facing Minister Louis Farrakhan. He has always talked about the racial injustice and discrimination that happens to black people. And he has desired that it is not right for people who have been privileged to take advantage of black people where they feel weak. And that is the kind of message that he has even continued to push in the clip that I've just played for you. Secondly, the media often struggles with balancing the portrayal of black leaders within a framework that avoids reinforcing negative stereotypes while addressing the complexities of their messages. Leaders who speak critically about systemic racism or institutional powers can be misrepresented or labeled as radical, which complicates nuanced reporting and may lead to sensationalism or bias in coverage. This is the case. Anybody who stands up for truth is always painted negatively. Why is it that people like this are always targeted? It means there is a system that is afraid of being exposed. And that is why when truth speakers come out, they are targeted and they are people whose lives are always in danger. Additionally, the historical context of media portrayal of black leaders includes a legacy of marginalization and misrepresentation. Historically, media outlets have often depicted black leaders in a negative or threatening light, influencing public perception. This historical bias can contribute to contemporary fears about covering these figures, as media outlets grapple with repercussions of potentially perpetuating these harmful narratives. Moreover, black leaders who mobilize significant grassroots support or advocate for substantial societal changes can challenge the interests of power stakeholders. This dynamic creates tension as media coverage must navigate the potential backlash from influential groups or public opinion shifts. In summary, media apprehension towards black American leaders is rooted in their challenging of systemic issues, the complexity of accurate portrayal, historical biases, and the potential consequences of disrupting established power dynamics. So this is the case. So when you saw Minister Louis Farrakhan facing those three journalists, in fact, including a black journalist who should know better, so you can make up your mind, but I think this is a critical point that we must talk about. Tell me down in the comment section what you think about this, and if you're watching us for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and also share. Thank you, and may the good Lord bless you. Goodbye.